This is Tommy Moore, Coppin County Commissioner of Precinct 4, and you're listening to Texas County Voice, a podcast for all 254 counties. Thank you for listening.
Hello and welcome to Texas County Voice. I'm Jody Seaburn with the Texas Association of Counties. In this episode, we traveled to the town of Helena, to a once bustling place known as the toughest little town in Texas.
Basically go out into the street, they would take your right hand and tie it to the other guy's right hand, give you each a 4-inch blade, and go.
But in 1884, a grieving father's anger changed everything.
Butler said, fine. If you're not going to own up to it and tell me who killed my son, then I'm going to dry this town up. I'm done.
Founded in 1852 by Thomas Ruckman and Lewis Owens, Helena rose fast as the county seat of the newly formed Karnes County. It had a courthouse, thriving businesses, saloons, a newspaper, and academy. A wealthy rancher, William Butler, ended Helena's future. Butler was instrumental in denying Helena the railroad that would have ensured its continued prosperity. Today, Helena is officially designated a ghost town, but it remains home to a scattering of residents and a collection of historic buildings preserved by the Karnes County Historical Society. I sat down with Mallory Deason with the Karnes County Museum to talk about Helena's colorful past, its fall from prominence, and the efforts to keep its history alive. Well, welcome to Texas County Voice, Ms. Deason.
Thank you.
It's good to be here in Karnes County. I've never been to Karnes County. Well, I've driven through Karnes County, but I've never stopped.
Well, glad you're here, and hopefully we'll give you some information, and maybe you'll come back and visit.
My interest in Helena was piqued by a story that we ran in our county magazine, our quarterly magazine. One of our freelance writers wrote about the history of Helena, and when I read that story, I thought this would make a great podcast episode. How would you describe Helena, both in its heyday, 170 years ago, and today?
So 170 years ago, it was lots of people, packed, crazy. It was almost like Dodge City in its day, just with the gunfights and, families, feuding families, all kinds of stuff. It was just very busy. This was also the route from San Antonio to the coast, so there was constant traffic through here. So very, very busy. Nowadays, there's just a couple of businesses. It's primarily families that live here, and about the only traffic we get is oil well traffic. Other than that, very, very quiet and almost exactly opposite from what it was 170 years ago.
Well, you mentioned that Helena was known for its rowdy ways. The Helena Duel is one of the most infamous pieces of Helena's history.
Yes, it is.
Talk a little bit about it.
So basically, if you had an issue with somebody,
so you got in an argument at one of the saloons?
Yep. Then you basically go out into the street. They would take your right hand and tie it to the other guy's right hand, give you each a 4-inch blade, and go.
And would everyone stand around and watch this?
Oh, yeah. And it could take, a couple of hours because the blade was just long enough to cause you to bleed, but not to puncture anything vital so that you didn't die too fast. So you literally bled out very slowly.
And so people would cheer for one person or the other? And
Absolutely.
Place bets, I assume?
Mm-hmm. Considering that was probably some of the only entertainment they had back then, yes.
And did this happen just once or twice and become part of the town's mythology, or did this happen fairly regularly?
As far as we know, pretty regularly. It kind of kept down, I guess, the shootings more or less, and just went to a knife fight instead. So from what we gather, it was pretty often.
And contributed, obviously, to the town's reputation as the toughest little town in Texas.
Absolutely.
Well, can you walk us through Helena's beginnings in the early 1850s? How the town came to be and so on?
Basically, from the knowledge that I've gleaned, had different ranches that were through here. Eventually, because of the traffic from San Antonio to Corpus Christi, Alameda was born, which was actually what Helena was called before. So Alameda was born basically just kind of as a rest stop for those going from San Antonio to the coast and back. Because with San Antonio taking things to ships to ship them out, stuff coming off of ships to bring to San Antonio. And so Alameda was born, and then another family decided to basically build the courthouse, changed the name to Helena, which is one of their wives, and then basically put it as the county seat and then go from there. And what honestly killed it off was because the railroad was supposed to come through Helena, Butler diverted it, said he was going to dry up this town. And so you have what they call the big curve coming out of Wilson County into Karnes to Karnes City. And then that's also when they ended up moving the courthouse to Karnes City also.
So after they established Helena and then petitioned the legislature to create Karnes County with Helena as the county seat, let's talk a little bit about Ruckman. He was quite the entrepreneur, wasn't he?
Very much so, yes. And him and the Butlers were like basically the two richest families in the county. So, people looked up to them. People relied on working on their ranches and things like that, for their livelihoods.
What was that potential that he saw? Was it just being on this main thoroughfare?
I think so, because, I don't think people realize it was almost like a highway out here of wagons going back and forth. Here there was, what was it? I don't remember how many hotels they said that were here, plus bars or saloons and all of that. So there was a lot of traffic through here because it was basically almost like the bird flies for people to travel from San Antonio to the coast and back.
Just a straight line.
Yeah, pretty much.
And Helena, at its peak, had saloons, hotels. There was even
General store.
An academy here.
Yep.
From what I read, it sounds like it was a college, but not quite a college.
So it was basically set up for primarily boys, and it took the curriculum a little bit more so than a normal classroom would, almost like your AP classes. And it was for, of course, the richer side of the county, and honestly kind of like a preamble to going to college, or those that weren't at least getting enough education so that, they could run their own businesses or take over the family business or whatever the case may be.
So it was a private school for the well-to-do.
Pretty much, yes. Which is surprising considering out in the middle of nowhere, small county, all that kind of stuff. Because even like Wilson County didn't ever have an academy.
Were there figures in Helena's founding that their stories still resonate today?
Primarily, the Butler story is kind of the biggest one, where his son was shot.
Now, the Butler story is key to Helena losing its status as a
Yes.
county seat. Tell us about that story.
So the story goes that Mr. Butler's son had come into town, was drinking, was shot and killed. The going story is that it was the sheriff at the time, but the sheriff wouldn't own up to it, neither would anybody else. And Butler said, fine. If you're not going to own up to it and tell me who killed my son, then I'm going to dry this town up. I'm done.
And he had the means and the political power to do so.
All he did was he had to pay the railroad X amount of money, help be able to get the land to make the big curve into Karnes City, and he did.
When the history of former county seats in Texas, it's almost always the railroad, where the railroad ended up going that moves the county seat from one town to another.
Because it basically took, by that time with railroad, they were the ones, of course, transferring most of the goods and stuff down to the coast instead of wagons and things like that. So that cut down a lot of the traffic here.
Right, so that traffic, the railroad dried it up.
Yep, because it was easier to load stuff on a train and send it than it was to, wagon and issues and time and robbery and so many other issues they could have on their way to and from the coast. So train was a whole lot easier.
So there's an election that was held to vote on moving the county seat from Helena to Karnes County, and
Yes.
Helena came out on the short side of that election.
Big time. Very short.
What was the reaction in Helena?
A lot of people were not happy because it was county seat. And so to end up giving that up, they knew once the county seat moved that was it. And it's because the railroad. I mean, when, the ox cart path basically had, started to dry up because of the railroad and all of that, then, so did businesses here. It wasn't unusual for people to literally dismantle and move. There are some buildings that are still left here, but not very many. But most of them they dismantled and out they went. So you have the two-story courthouse. We have the original post office, which was moved onto the grounds. It originally was across the road. And then we have the Seguinas farmhouse that was moved from the Seguinas property to the museum. Across the street, we actually have the first Masonic Lodge for the county, which was the Alameda Masonic Lodge. And then we also have the Ruckman House, which is behind our property. I'm the one that kind of just gives the tours, helps with upkeep on the actual exhibits and stuff. We do have a couple that are our maintenance that they do most of the cleaning and the yard work, and they're amazing at it. Very blessed to have them here to help. I'm the curator. I just kind of keep things going inside the cases. And matter of fact, I just redid the bottom floor of the courthouse, painted the walls, redid the displays, as there was dirt in there from probably 20 years ago.
Well, what's it like to work around, so much history?
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And being a curator of two museums, and seeing where they come together too in their history, which is amazing to me.
You mentioned before we started, you're also the curator of the Wilson County
Jailhouse Museum in Floresville. And so Wilson County, part of it actually was part of Karnes County. And so the two counties have intertwined with that starting, plus their schools. I actually did extensive research. It probably took me 6 months of research on even the schools that we shared to just the schools that had been in Wilson County at one point in time. 131 schools just in that county.
And after Helena lost its status as county seat, the courthouse was used for other purposes.
School, I know they had churches in there, some meetings in there. And then at one point it got to where they didn't have anything. It was really, really dilapidated.
When was the decision made to preserve as much as could be preserved?
1962. And so basically from there, the Ruttmans are the one that started wanting to try to do something with the courthouse and preserve it and keep it around for the children so they can actually see their history of not only the families, probably their family, how the county became, all of that, and having it in one place so that hopefully it would educate them and remember where they came from and where their families came from and what they did to help make Karnes County what it is today. And then basically from there, it sat vacant for quite a long time. About 10 years ago, I actually had come to visit with a friend of mine, and the museum wasn't open, but we had heard about the Ruckman House. So we just drove back there, and you couldn't get into it, which was fine, but you could walk around and kind of see in the windows. Front porch was pretty much gone. You didn't want to get on in the other porch that was around the back because it was sketchy. It was just in terrible, terrible shape. And then apparently not long after that is when they decided to start doing work to it to try to get it back to where it used to be.
Well, the house in its prime must have been quite the house.
Very much so, because most people did wood. It was easier to put up, easier to take down. So brick wasn't a big thing until later on. But then you'd be amazed at how many places end up being brick. Wilson County Courthouse and jail, they were both made from bricks from Lavernia. There was an actual brick kiln there. that made the bricks for the courthouse and for the jailhouse.
So what are some of the most surprising things that people see when they visit the courthouse?
One of the things people get really surprised at is our fossils. We actually have some dinosaur fossils. And so everybody's like, holy cow, from around here? Yeah. During a big boom, I want to say back in the 70s, I think, they ended up finding quite a bit of fossils. And so were brought here. Having 2 original jail cells sitting outside, people are just like, holy cow. And even our courtroom upstairs. Because when you go into our courthouse, the bottom floor was all the offices, county offices, and then upstairs was the actual courtroom. So, yeah. And then when they see, of course, the Ruckman House, they're just like, oh, wow. It is a sight to behold. It's an awesome and beautiful house. Absolutely.
What are some local events that the county does to preserve this history?
Basically, what we do here at the jail is we have a Victorian tea party. We usually do that in the spring. You can dress in period clothing or just dress in your Sunday best. We just had ours back in April. The other that we do is called the Indian Summer Heritage Festival. And that's our 2 times a year to try to bring in money for our exhibits and stuff like that. And hopefully to bring in people and make them just a little bit more aware of their history here.
During the Victorian Tea Party, do you reenact the Helena duel with rubber knives?
No, we figured that one we'll leave with the ladies. We've actually talked about doing a reenactment of the Helena duel during the Indian Summerfest. You know, you can imagine it to a point, but to actually see it is a whole different ballgame.
It's even hard to imagine. And you would have had people standing around cheering and betting on the outcome.
Oh, yeah, very much so. And what people don't realize, too, is hangings would have been just as popular. It's right in front of our Masonic Lodge.
Well, what are some future plans for the museum grounds and the courthouse?
Right now, I'm trying to at least get some grants started for our farmhouse, the Sagina's house. We have 2 walls that are on each side that really need some work done to them. The wood's starting to rot, unfortunately. The porch needs to be fixed. There's a few things that need to be done to it. So I'm trying to put grants out there to get that started. I know that we want to try to maybe do a few more things to help bring in, working with the schools to do like day trips here for the kids to come and be able to do a walkthrough and see the museum and all of that good stuff. I'm hoping that the next curator will be able to get that going because it's the kids that are going to keep this going. It's that next generation that's going to keep this place going and helping to remember the history.
Well, I thank you for your time and look forward to walking the grounds.
Thank you for hollering at me to do the podcast. I appreciate it and was very looking forward to it. And I'm glad that you got to come, and that way you can also see our place.
Helena's story is a reminder that change is a constant in Texas and that preserving our history takes passion, creativity, and community effort. Our thanks to the Karnes County Museum and Historical Society for keeping that history alive. And thank you to Mallory Deason for sharing her time with us. She is ending her run curating and overseeing the old Karnes County Courthouse and Helena's surviving houses and buildings, but you can still plan your own road trip to Helena. Check our show notes on county.org for more information. For Texas County Voice, I'm Jody Siebert. Texas County Voice is a production of the Texas Association of Counties about the people, issues, and all things important to Texans and Texas counties. To learn more about Texas counties and the Texas Association of Counties, visit county.org. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.